All right. It is Thursday night at 7 p.m. So you know what time that is. It is my weekly YouTube live where you get to interact with me personally, ask any questions about the real estate market in Northern Michigan, what is going on in Northern Michigan. We've got a big one tonight. I'm not sure if you've been following the news or not, but Northern Michigan was just hit with what they're calling a 100-year storm. And I haven't seen a lot of national coverage. And actually, I'm a little bit, I don't want to say, I don't know if embarrassed is the right word, but I was actually at a leadership conference when the storm hit. In fact, I drove to Traverse City at about, I don't know, 2 o'clock on Saturday because my flight left really early on Sunday. And when I got there, I found out that I had just left Petoskey early enough to miss the storm. I got to start at about 5 o'clock on Saturday. And we heard for the time leading up to this. So the reason I left at the time I did was because everybody said a storm was coming, but we had, and I don't think anybody had any idea of what type of storm was going to hit Northern Michigan. We're talking about, it's Thursday now. We're talking about this happened on Sunday. There are most of Petoskey got power yesterday morning. There are still tons and tons and tons of people that don't have power in Northern Michigan. If you're not super familiar with Northern Michigan, a lot of this area is rural. We talk about, Traverse City, Petoskey, Gaylord, those, the bigger towns in Northern Michigan, but there are a lot of more rural towns that, they're not able to get in their driveways. They're not able to, get out of their houses. And we're going to talk about a lot of what's going on. And I'm grateful that I'm able to do this live tonight because I wasn't sure if I was going to have either power or internet yesterday. So I apologize. We did not promote that we were doing this one as early as we normally do. Hopefully by now you just know that likely I'm going to be on at 7 o'clock on Thursdays, regardless if we post the reminder early or not. But I didn't want to tell you I was coming on unless I knew for sure. So we sort of woke up this morning, realized I was going to be able to do this video. So we had a whole other topic that we're going to talk about that we're going to save for a different day because this, just bringing awareness to the storm and what's going on. And I've had a lot of questions from people that were thinking about relocating here. They're curious, is this how it is in Northern Michigan? And it's not, this isn't a hurricane in Florida that happens once every few years. This isn't a tornado. This is something that in my 42 years, I've never experienced. And I know people here that are a lot older than I am, who also said that this is just something that they've certainly never experienced either. So my prayers, thoughts, well wishes go out to everybody being affected by this in Northern Michigan. And if you're watching this from Northern Michigan, I hope you're hanging in there. We're going to make it through this and we're going to come back better than ever. It's really, I was in Miami, Florida for, as I mentioned, a leadership conference. And I was really, mentally concerned about what it was going to be like when I drove back to Northern Michigan this morning. And it was coming from Traverse City, you got to just about Elk Rapids, and you started noticing a lot of trees being knocked over and split in half, and some around people's houses, and there was just debris everywhere. But there were also a lot of linemen with bucket trucks and a lot of electric companies and a lot of people in their yard cleaning up. So, the healing has started. A lot of people are doing what they can to make it through the storm. There's still a lot of work to do. I've got a couple of news. I've got a bunch of stuff we're going to share with you. This is just a generalization. We're going to talk a little bit about real estate tonight and answer some questions about how storms like this are going to affect the real estate market, because you come here for real estate advice and real estate conversation, but also I want to make sure you just know what's going on in Northern Michigan. In fact, I was at this conference in Florida and I was with a really productive agent. It was a dinner one night and he was at the table across from me and we know each other a little bit. So really productive agent from Ann Arbor. And we got to talking, and Ann Arbor is only 3 or 4 hours away. I mean, there's a lot of people from Ann Arbor that live in Northern Michigan and vice versa. A lot of people from Northern Michigan, their kids go to U of M, and he had no idea what was going on. And I think it's really not that we need, news trucks here or CNN or Fox News flying over, but I'm actually surprised how little coverage this is getting. Governor Whitner is here right now, and she declared this a state of emergency probably sometime late Sunday. It sounds like I just read an article that I'll share with you in a little bit that she's been on the phone with President Trump to get federal funds to sort of help the recovery. I was driving through town today. There was at the fairgrounds at Emma County, there was a bunch of, my son was with me and he's like, why are there a bunch of like Humvees and Army vehicles? And I said, that's the National Guard, and they come out when things get really bad like this and try to help where they can. So we're getting a ton of support, ton of relief, and we still have a long ways to go. So I'm just going to share with you just to start. We're going to get into a lot of things tonight. As always, this is meant to be interactive. If you have any questions about, hey, if you have questions about the storm or something you heard or something you want to confirm, or if you're thinking, well, we've got the downside is we got a ton of people that are trying to relocate here for the spring market, and this has definitely made it a little bit more challenging. The interesting thing is, though, if you go 20 minutes outside of Petoskey towards East Jordan, um, it looks like nothing has happened. It's literally just Petoskey, Harbor Springs, east. I was over to went and checked on our house over on the east side of the state today, and there's a lot of trees down. Luckily, everything was okay. But yeah, drop a comment if there's anything you want to talk about real estate related. I know the market. This is the time of year when the market gets hot. There's a ton of people looking for houses. There's a lot of sellers ready to make a move. So please drop any questions you want. This is going to be a really interactive conversation as always. We're going to talk a little bit about the storm because I can't. We had an internal discussion today. If one of the things I don't like, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong about this, so weigh in. I don't like when a tragedy happens and everybody tries to clout chase or get some clout from it. So I really haven't posted much about the storm. There's still a lot of people dealing with it. However, at the same time, I don't think that I can tell. I don't think I can call myself or promote myself as the person that's going to give you all the inside information about what is actually going on in northern Michigan and ignore the storm, because it is the biggest thing in northern Michigan right now. It's bigger than selling houses. It's bigger than making YouTube videos. It's bigger than anything. So just want to, again, bring some awareness, let you know what's going on, answer some real estate questions, and just have a fun conversation as always. So we got our first comment. Caught alive. I just drove back from Florida, Petoskey area to check on our house and property. I'm at a hotel. My two little kids agreed. Linemen, I think she said means linemen, are everywhere. We are incredibly blessed. A friend of mine, Ian, who's our lender that's always on here, posted a video the other day on, I should have saved it, but it was on Facebook where there has to be, I don't know how to quantify this, but there has to be hundreds, if not thousands of linemen in northern Michigan right now. So as always, let me know where you're watching from. I love to see where we're reaching people at. I've had people from across the country. I've had people from across the world watching these videos and ask me, reach out to schedule a call to talk about real estate in northern Michigan. So as always, if there's anything on your mind, if there's anything you want to talk about, storm related, not storm related, what you need to know to make sure you're prepared. I've had a lot of questions. People that are relocating to northern Michigan want to know how to survive a storm like this if it happens again. And a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, there was a storm very similar to this, but at a much smaller scale. I think we lost power for like 2 days. Everybody, like the most anybody lost power from was 2 days. It was about the same time of year. But this one's a doozy. And again, I'm going to share some articles and pictures just to give you an idea of what's going on up here in northern Michigan. This is one, if you know of anybody that might be interested in this content or interested in what's going on, because I don't think the storm is getting much coverage, feel free to share this with friends, put this on your Facebook. Don't do it for me, do it to educate the world about what's going on in a place that's sort of special to us. So without further ado, I'm going to add some of this. I'm going to show you some of these news stories. So bear with me 1 second. So we'll start with just the photos of northern Michigan. I was scrolling through this before. So this is from the Petoskey News Review. One of the silver linings was it was really pretty. I wasn't here for the ice part, but if you look at some of these pictures right here, it was just a tremendous ice storm that weighed everything down. And then you can see, snapped entire power lines. This is Resort Pike. This is a pretty popular road that runs north to south in Petoskey. That it's a way a lot of people get around. A lot of people rely on Resort Pike to get to their house. It leads to Walloon Lake. It leads to a number of subdivisions. Luckily, most people going down Resort Pike had a different way to go and could sort of avoid this mess. But here's a line of tree service. It's not just the linemen, it's the people cutting up the trees. When I was driving today, I saw there was literally somebody on the side, not somebody, a crew on the side of the road, just putting endless trees and endless branches into a chipper and just spraying them on the side of the road. So certainly everybody doing what they can. This is Afton. This is a road in Afton, Michigan. This is actually where my other house is. We were out there today. I drove right past this, so I know exactly where this was. It doesn't look like this now. They've cleaned it up a little bit. This is a house in Toppinabee. Toppinabee is just north of Indian River, sort of between Indian River and Sheboygan on Mullet Lake. But I know this house very well. I did not take this picture, but trees falling on top of houses, breaking decks, making roads impassable. And then here's a picture of the lineman crew that have just done a tremendous job getting us back on track in northern Michigan. So I hope that gives you some sort of an idea of what northern Michigan is dealing with right now. Again, make sure if you know of anybody that's interested or anybody that has a house in northern Michigan or that is interested in northern Michigan that might care about what's going on up here, feel free to share this with your friends, social media, wherever you want. You have my permission certainly to do so. So talk about the scope of the storm. It really went from Charlevoix over to the east side of the state. I don't think it made it as far as Alpena. If you know differently, sure, feel free to wait. And again, I'm telling you what I know. There's not a lot of news coverage about this, so I'm just telling you what I've picked up from social media and knowing a lot of people around northern Michigan. So, from Charlevoix over to Alpena, down to Gaylord, maybe a little bit further. Yes, Lyman, I don't have my glasses on. This won't stop us from buying more property here. We love northern Michigan. Yeah, Generax. Yep. Generax for your home and business. Glad you were safe. Thank you so much, Tea Time Barbie. That means a lot to. I'm glad you caught it live. I know we've talked back and forth before, and I'm glad you're on this one. So thank you so much for coming. Yeah, I was at CrossFit today at noon, and one of my friends, George, was there, and he lost power. George and I sort of live near each other, and he lost power. So I have in my office right now. Obviously, I have powered internet because if I didn't have powered internet, I couldn't be doing this right now. I live 5 minutes from my office and I have power, but I don't have internet. And a lot of people in that region seem to be in the same boat. Generac generators. He asked me, he said, my wife's, after the storm, now my wife's looking at Generac generators. And he's like, they're $12,000, $15,000, which that's the best of the best. And that's what I would recommend to get. But he's like, he said, that seems like overkill for this happening one time. We built our house 6 years ago. We've never had anything like this. And I told him, I said, yep, there's certainly expensive. It's certainly, would I trade $12,000 for 3 or 4 days of having to live without electricity? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But they do add value to your house. So that's something we're going to talk about tonight. And in terms of wanting to make sure you're preparing yourself to live the most comfortable life in northern Michigan, Generac, $10, $12, $15,000 is not an insignificant amount of money. At the same time, it's an investment in safety, comfort. And this is not a Generac commercial. And there's tons of other generators in northern Michigan or anywhere in the world. I have a friend that debated buying one forever. And I saw him at the coffee shop this morning and I said, hey, how do you feel about buying that generator now? Because I knew it weighed on him and he called me a bunch of times and he's like, I don't know if I should do this or not. And he said, it paid for itself this weekend by having power when the rest of the world didn't. And what's nice about these generators, especially the good ones, is you set them up that when your power goes off, you don't even know and it kicks back on. Now, again, that doesn't help you have internet, but they make your life more comfortable. They add value. It's an insurance policy. If you figure if you live in a house for 6 years, you're probably going to have paid well over $10, $12, $15,000 in home insurance, depending on the house. So it's definitely something to consider. Tea Time Barbie says we have them in our Florida home as well. Generac. Yeah, there are other brands. I know that Generac is the best. So yeah, definitely look. And again, this isn't a commercial. I don't care. Whatever your budget is, whatever your, look, and I know people that just have the generators that run on the little ones that just gave them enough to charge their phones. And, there's certainly definitely many degrees of generators available. So power outages, there's still half of Petoskey has power. The other half doesn't. If you start getting out northeast of town, you can certainly just driving, you can tell that the road gets there's a lot more damage. There's still people without a lot of power. Going over to Lansing, Indian River, still they don't have power. It's been a long time now, 4 or 5 days, 6 days. Judging by the amount of people that are working over there, it feels like the power is going to be back on sooner rather than later. They're doing, when I checked on our house when I got there, there happened to be 3 bucket trucks in my yard. Now we have a pretty big piece of property, but they were there working on the power line. So I believe my house over there is going to get power soon, which is definitely a little bit of a relief. Infrastructure strain. Yeah, this is I know the guy. So there's a little gas station. The town that I own a house in is called Afton, Michigan. It's very small. You can look on a map. I talk about it often because I love going there. This I know the person that owns the little party store there, a gas station, and it has this is how small it is. It has the same gas pumps, not digital, they're analog or dial or whatever that's called, that were there when I was a little kid. And he said he was the only person that had gas for a few days, and he sold $150,000 worth of gas in 3 days. Now, unfortunately for him, there's not. I don't know if you know the gas station business model, but there's not a lot of profit in gas. It's more of a way to get people in the door. But $150,000 in 3 days. That is a tremendous amount of gas. He said he ran out. They brought him more, and he's considering to sell it, continuing to sell it. But we're sort of past when I feel bad saying this, but when I missed the part of people waiting in line to get gas and go to Meijer, which is our grocery store. But very quickly, it's, I got gas. I pulled up and got gas today. And, I need to go to replenish my refrigerator because you have to throw everything away when the power goes out for 4 days. And what I'm hearing is Meijer isn't, too big of a nightmare right now. So I'll give Northern Michigan a lot of credit. Now there's still people that are without power and are going to be without power for a little bit longer, but Northern Michigan, the linemen, the tree cutters, the, volunteers, the National Guard, Governor Whitner, sounds like she's getting help from Trump, really went from a disaster to on the path to recovery very quickly. And I just can't say enough positive about the people of Northern Michigan and how grateful I am that this wasn't as bad as it could have been. Property damage, I showed that a while ago. The property damage here is extensive because like trees falling on houses, cars, decks, RVs, boats, there were some massive trees that fell down, and that is definitely going to contribute to property damage. We're going to talk about insurance next. I hope everybody's well insured. It's definitely a little bit of an issue. So, property damage is probably the biggest thing. I'll be honest, just driving around. And if you're up here and you're watching this, correct me if you've seen something differently. Just driving around, there didn't seem to be as much property damage as I would have expected. I saw some cars with broken windows. I saw, a house that somebody we know, they had a tree go through the windshield. Most houses in Northern Michigan are built for are hardy. They're built for weather. They're built for snow, rain, wind. Certainly not what we just experienced. But they're definitely seem to be prepared for this type of thing. Obviously, insurance claims are surging. I'm going to get our insurance. I thought he might come on this week, but the insurance agent that we work with, he's up to his elbows right now with people filing claims. One thing I want to say, I heard something from another realtor on Facebook that if you have and I learned this through a client a couple of years ago. A lot of homes, and this is important, so pay attention and maybe share this with a friend if they don't know, if they're from Northern Michigan or anywhere. This isn't even Northern Michigan. This is anywhere that has basements. If you have a house that has a basement, the basement rider is like $10,000. I had a client one time that did not get it. And I'm sorry, when I said $10,000, I meant the basement rider is like $10 a month or $100. It's not a lot of money. This is why I need to get our insurance agent on, because I don't know exactly what it is, but it's not a lot of money. And I think it's dependent on your situation. It does not take much water in your basement to make a disaster. If you have a basement right now, after this, walk downstairs and just look around and start measuring 2 or 3 inches. And 2 or 3 inches is not very much, but 2 or 3 inches of water in a basement is devastating because it gets into the insulation, it bleeds up the wall. If you have a TV or video games or anything on the floor or close to the floor, if you have a treadmill or you have a Peloton, you're probably gonna be okay. But if you have anything, any value, it does not take much for 2 or 3 inches of water to ruin a basement and become a very expensive fix. So do me a favor. If you have a basement and you do not know if you have a basement insurance rider, call your insurance agent tomorrow, whoever it is, and ask them to add it or ask them what it would look like to add it or get their advice, because that is the number one problem I see. And not just the storm, but the storm reminded me of it. That is the number one problem I see with people with home insurance is not having adequate coverage. And insurance is expensive, and owning a house is expensive, and buying a house is expensive. And oftentimes when you're buying that house, you're trying to get the lowest insurance quote you can. That way you can qualify. And I totally understand that. But as I get older and as I maybe mature, get a little wiser, insurance is not the thing to cut corners on, because when situations like this happen, the people that are, you know, properly insured versus the people that are not properly insured are having a way different experience. And I don't want anybody to struggle. I don't want anybody to have financial devastation. And that is definitely something to keep in mind. Oh, here we go. I sold insurance for 10 years. Some pump coverage is the most often. Exactly. Sean, thank you so much for weighing in. I'm really happy you're here for this. Sean says, I sold insurance for 10 plus years. Some pump coverage is the most often declined and most often needed coverage. It has led to uncomfortable. Talk to your agent. I'm really happy he's on, because that I couldn't have said it better myself. So I appreciate that. Sean, I actually heard something. Can you verify this? I saw it, and I saw it on Facebook so that means it must be true, right? Somebody said on Facebook that if your basement floods because your sump pump failed, you have to prove, insurance company's going to make you prove that your sump pump worked prior to the flood. Is that true? What happens? Tell me what happens, Sean. I'm genuinely curious. I think this will help our audience. What happens if you have basement coverage, your sump pump fails, and your basement floods? What happens next? I'm going to get into the next thing because it's going to take you a second to respond, but I'm genuinely curious, and I think that'll be very helpful. Generators and gas, we talked about this a minute ago. If you can afford it and you live in northern Michigan, we don't lose power. We lose power, but I mean, unlike storms like this, I'm trying to think back of how many times we've lost power for more than 24 hours. And my memory isn't what it used to be, but I don't think it's many times. If you're from northern Michigan, weigh in. So, verify with me, either agree or disagree. If you are watching this either live or the recording and you live in northern Michigan or have lived in northern Michigan, I don't remember very many times in the last 20 years of losing power for more than 24 hours at a time. So, but at the same time, a generator, again, adds value to your house and certainly makes your life a lot more comfortable when the power does go out. Schools are closed, obviously, across northern Michigan. I have a bet with my son. Obviously, tomorrow's Friday. They're not going to school tomorrow. I don't think they're going to go back to school next week. I don't think they might go back later next week. I don't think Monday or Tuesday they're going to be back in school, because there are still people. Look, Petoskey Public Schools control the school that my son goes to, and there are still people that school district covers that don't have power. The same with Gaylord, the same with Charlevoix, the same with Alliance and Indian River. The thing about these school districts in here, and this is something worth noting if you're considering relocating to northern Michigan, is, sure, many people live in downtown Petoskey or near downtown Petoskey or downtown Harbor Springs or near downtown Harbor Springs, but there's still a large percentage that don't, and you have to account for them. So a lot of times you'll see school closings and people are like, wow, the roads are fine, but they don't take into account that, northern Michigan is still rural, and there are still back roads that don't take much to be slippery, and you still have to make sure that you're maintaining safety. Food options. Since I made this banner, the food options have increased. It seems like every fast food restaurant I drive past is open. It seems like every restaurant's open. I will say this, there are a lot of people giving free food to the linemen or offering any of the first responders help. So that is something that I think northern Michigan does a really good job of. Is we talk on this channel a lot about a sense of community, and there was countless people posting. We put a post on Facebook today because my office obviously has power and internet, and I said any real estate agent in northern Michigan that doesn't have power or internet is more than welcome to come. We have a big office. I said, you're more than welcome to come to our office. I'm not going to bug you. I probably won't even be here because we are running around checking on our clients' houses or showing people houses that had to get houses. So everybody just sort of, we've had people say, come take a shower at my house, come get food at my house. These are the moments when you realize just how tight knit northern Michigan is. And too often there's the vocal minority that talk about, wanting Northern Michigan to stay the same way, or they don't welcome people. But I'll tell you, I rarely feel that the people that live in Northern Michigan are unwelcoming to one another or unwelcoming to new people. And the last few days have shown that. It seems like everybody that could do something has done something. And I think Northern Michigan, you know, obviously the linemen, obviously the people cleaning up the trees and the police and all of that deserve a lot of credit, but just the regular people in Northern Michigan, there wasn't a bunch of looting or something, those kind of things, or vandalism or stuff like that might have happened in other bigger cities, and definitely something that I think is worth talking about in Northern Michigan. Secondary and vacation homes, we spent the last few days, once Candace was doing this before I got back, and then once I got back, we called a lot of our clients and drove by their houses and just sent them videos, just to give them peace of mind. Most of their, not even most, all of their houses are fine. Some of the roads getting to the houses were a little bit tricky, but if you have a house in Northern Michigan and you're watching this and you want us to take a peek at it, just send me a message here. We'll gladly do so and just send you a video, because I think sometimes peace of mind is worth a lot. And it was just nice to be able to help those people who were sitting at their house in Metro Detroit or Florida or Texas or Chicago, wherever our clients were, worried about their Northern Michigan house. And we could just say, look, everything's fine. There's no windows blown out. There's no trees knocked down. Now, some of them do have some cleanup ahead of them, but hey, at least they'll have some firewood for bonfires this summer. Mental health toll. This is something. So I'm not going to get hippie on this, but I'm a big mental health advocate. I think we need to do more to take care of our mental health than we do. I definitely worry about, I think if you've ever been without power, or if you've ever had something that you take for granted taken away from you, or conveniences, I think after a few days, it starts to affect you mentally. And definitely seeing some posts on Facebook or Instagram about people that are having a hard time. And I would just tell you, the first thing I did when I got back today was came to the office, went to CrossFit at noon like I do. I just tried to plug into my routine, because it is very hard to drive through an area. There's a couple of things that affect people in this is, driving through your hometown and seeing, light posts knocked over, trees knocked over, knowing there are people without power, passing the hordes of electrical trucks. There's the mental toll of that. And there's also the mental toll of, if you haven't had power for a week, or you don't know when the next time you're going to have power is, or you don't know the next time, you're going to have running water at your house. Those are real issues, and definitely something worth talking about. All right. Sean is weighing in. So here we go. Let's go to this one first. Every state has different regulations, but generally the insurance company has to prove it was unplugged if they suspect that. Okay. So the burden of proof is on the insurance company. That makes me feel a little better, not the other way around. If it's broken, they'll just subrogate manufacturer. But if they find reasonably it was intentionally, yeah. And they should. Look, if you intentionally unplug your sump pump to flood your basement, I'm on the insurance agent side with that. So no, Sean, this is super helpful, especially in a time like this. So first of all, thanks for watching, and thanks for adding this value to the audience. This is where the client may pay for an independent adjuster to fight. This is a comment they usually just pay. Disclaimer, I renew my license. Okay, so it's been a while, but these are principles of insurance. So Sean, thank you again. I really appreciate that. Impact on real estate, to be determined. I put this in here because I wanted, a lot of times when I write these banners, just to give you an inside look into how I do this, I write triggers that I know that I have a thought about. And I put impact in real estate before. This was one of the first ones I put in here. So my mind has changed on this a little bit. I don't know what the impact is going to be. Maybe the good news of the whole world not knowing what's going on here is we're still getting calls for people that want to see houses. And we have to tell them, look, like it is an actual, like it is, especially a couple of days ago, it was, people wonder like, hey, I'm coming up this weekend to see houses. And I said, you might want to rethink that, because here's what's going on in Northern Michigan, and definitely, take that into account before making any trips up here. Sellers are going to have to disclose these damages if something happens, or look, seller's disclosures are serious. That's what a seller fills out every single time they sell their house. It is written in stone. If you omit something that you knowingly knew, if you knew the roof was shot and you knew the septic or the well was shot and you didn't disclose it, and the buyer buys your house, you're going to be in trouble. So we take those seriously. Definitely going to have to modify. If you have a house listed right now and a tree falls on it or something breaks, you have to disclose that. So just a little tidbit, but worth talking about. Happy to help. I'm thinking about guys down here in Chicagoland. Stay strong. I really appreciate that, Sean. That means a lot to all of us here. I asked myself this question, and again, I wrote this down a couple of days ago when I was wondering if I was going to do this or not. I knew I was going to talk about the storm. I wasn't sure if it was going to be this week or next week because of the power and internet. So I wrote this sort of foreshadowing. When will everything be back? You know, I'll bet it's a month before everything is back to normal in northern Michigan, meaning everybody has power, all the roads are cleared out. The bike path in Petoskey, I mean, the bike path is the least of our worries right now, but I mean, I don't know I can't tell you how long they're going to take to clear the bike path. I mean, I drove along it today because there's part of it that goes through 31 between Charlottesville and Petoskey, and it is covered. I mean, that is going to be that's not something I don't think that you know, I think that's going to be up to the city, the Parks and Rec to sort of take care of. I don't think they're going to get a lot. And right, I mean, they got to spend the time and money fixing people that need power and roads to drive down. So I do think that's going to be a little bit of an issue. So again, if you're just hopping on, I know I can see the number going up. So a lot of people are joining us late. We're talking about the 100-year storm in Petoskey right now. If this is something you think somebody from Northern Michigan or somebody that's curious in Northern Michigan would benefit from, you have my permission to share it with them. There isn't a lot of news coverage yet. I think there's going to be. I think once Trump gets involved from a presidential standpoint, there's probably going to be a little bit more light shed on this, just because I think when it escalates to the point where a president is involved, suddenly the news mediums or the media take note. And again, I haven't seen anything on the Weather Channel. I haven't seen anything on the big media sources. So it's sort of surprising. Advice for current homeowners. Again, I typed this up a couple of days ago. We've sort of talked about it throughout this video tonight, or this live tonight. A couple of thoughts. One, we talked about the generator link, so I'm not going to go into that. Two, make sure that the trees surrounding your houses, look, this storm took out healthy big trees. Outside of that, this conversation isn't just about this storm. It's also about preparing this storm is shined a light that, hey, look, trees can't fall on your house. And I don't think we're going to have a storm like this again. But if you have a tree that's next to your house that's, a little bit weak or a little bit rotted or something happened, make sure you clean it up, because trees fall on people's houses here outside of a storm like this. So this is a good reminder to make sure that your house is ready for, Mother Nature, what could happen. A lot of the power companies, all of the power line companies here have easements, and we deal with this a lot when we sell a house, because they'll do the title work and an easement will come up. The power companies here do a good job. Now, it's very hard because some of these power lines go through the absolute woods here. But the power companies here do have an easement to keep the brush and trees around the power lines clear. Now, they only have a little bit of an easement, and if you look at the easements this wide, the trees are here and they fall over, they're going to infringe on that easement, and there's just nothing they can do about it, because you can't have, you can't cut, because these easements go through people's properties. And we just sold a house recently, and right before closing, they're like, somebody's on the property cutting trees down, and we went to look, and it was the power line cleaning up the trees. Now, I bet those people are grateful now, because maybe they saved power where they wouldn't have last time. A couple of comments coming in. I did not know the president was involved. Yeah, I actually have a story. Let me share this with you. This is something that I don't know enough to know this. And if anybody does, correct me. I've said this forever, that I think we should have underground utilities here. For one, I think downtown Petoskey would look a lot better if they didn't have ugly power lines. Secondly, I don't think you'll ever have underground power lines everywhere in northern Michigan, but I think there's a lot of places that you could have them. Look, the fiber optics underlying, the cables underground, the more underground utilities, specifically power, you can have in an area, the less likely it is that the power lines are going to hit by branches. That is just common sense. So I did not know the president was involved. I got a story I want to share with you, and this is a good segue into that. So Governor Whitmer is here right now. She's at the Emma County. I think they call it the Emma County Emergency Center. I don't necessarily know where that is. My guess is that's just something they indicated. So She witnessed the destruction firsthand when she traveled north of Petoskey to hear a briefing from the Emmet County officials. Um, Senator Demus and our state rep, Parker Fairbairn, have done a really good job of advocating for Northern Michigan. Um, Demus was on Facebook very early looking for help, asking the governor to call state of emergency. That way we would get some extra funding. And he definitely, I feel that he did a good job. So Whitmer goes on to say, I can tell you what they're doing, a phenomenal amount of work. We've been hit really hard. As I drove up, I saw the convoy of National Guard on the way as well. I saw snap poles. I know that it's going to be a tough recovery ahead, but our goal is to make sure that we are clearing roads and helping make sure that people can get their energy restored, which obviously is first and foremost. Earlier this week, Whitmer declared a state of emergency for Otsego, uh, and I can show you on a map. Let me get a pull a map up here. So I'm going to go over this. I'm going to finish this article, and I'm going to go over the map. Bear with me a second. So Otsego, Oscoda, Mount Morency, Presque Emmett, Charlevoix, Sheboygan, Crawford, Mackinac, Alpena, Alcona, and Antrim counties in order to help with response and recovery efforts. She also lifted trucking restrictions. We have what are called frost laws here, meaning when the roads freeze, we don't allow heavy trucks to go on them. So she actually, I didn't know this until I read this article, but she actually because that would have been even a bigger mess. If you would have been in a situation where you couldn't have put big trucks on the roads, I don't know what we would still obviously all be without power. Whitmer says she also communicated with President Donald Trump about the seriousness of the storm's damage and potential need for additional federal resources to help. I'll be curious how that goes. It's too early for us to make a federal claim yet, she said. With regard to federal assistance, I wanted to share with the president the scope and breadth of what we're seeing. Ultimately, in order to qualify, we've got to have a robust report of the extent of the damage. It's too early for that, but I wanted to lay the groundwork. So it sounds like she's having the conversation with President Trump right now about needing to get some federal funding. Too late for underground lines. Yeah, that's something I don't know, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I'm sure there's something about the underground power lines that I don't know, that it's not as easy as just going to bury a bunch of power lines. So here's the map. I'm going to share this other screen with you so you can see just exactly where where'd this go? Hold on one second. Why isn't this letting me share it with you? Oh, here we go. So if you look in this, you're not going to be able to see my cursor. I learned that a couple of times ago. So Emmett, if you look just at the tip, Emmett, Sheboygan, Presque Alpena, Mount Morency. So basically the whole upper, if you hold your hand up, if you hold your left hand up, the whole northeastern part. And I mentioned earlier, Charlevoix, it did get some of Antrim. So Antrim so basically the tip of the mitt with Oscoda, Alcona mixed in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. So that is definitely a big area that has certainly helped. Don't expect much help from FEMA. I agree with you. I don't know that this is going to become, it feels like if FEMA was going to be here, they would be here by now. So I'm really curious. I'm genuinely curious. I don't have an agenda around this. I'm genuinely curious if this does get federal funding. It seems like we made a lot of progress. There's still a lot of progress to go. And I don't know how much the federal government cares about, trees being down or people having branches in their yard. I hope Northern Michigan gets as much help as it possibly can. I just genuinely curious. I'll report back. My guess is on next week's live, we'll also be talking about the storm and what has happened since we spoke last. So make sure next Thursday at 7 p.m. you join me again, because I'm going to be on here for a few more minutes, obviously, but make sure you check back in next Thursday, 7 p.m., because I'll be on here to give you more of an update, and hopefully I'll tell you that everything's back to normal, and we'll be talking about what's going on with the real estate market. The question I have is, have any of you outside of northern Michigan, are you hearing about this storm, or is it still quiet? Because obviously I'm here, and most of my friends are from here, and most of the people I follow are from here. Uh, I'm genuinely curious. Are you seeing a lot of this from outside the area, or is it just I don't FEMA? Yeah, I don't. I'm not going to get into that. Oh, I don't. Okay, I thought she said I don't want FEMA involved. I don't think FEMA will be involved either. I don't think this is as close as we're going to get to a natural disaster in northern Michigan. And I don't want to diminish what a lot of people in northern Michigan are going through, but this isn't, you know, this pales. It's hard, but it pales in comparison to a hurricane where, nobody lost their entire house that I'm aware of. Now there might be trees on roof. I haven't heard anything here in Texas. Tina, thank you for weighing in. Yeah, I'm genuinely curious if this is going to be an after look, and maybe this could be a big deal to me, but not a big deal to anybody else. I think this is a really big deal. I think a storm like this is a big deal. Um, Maybe because there hasn't been a high death toll, or I don't know what it takes to reach the point where national news cares about a story like this. So I'm going to be on here for a few minutes longer. I've exhausted everything I have to tell you about the storm. I have nothing else to do. So if you want to keep talking, we can keep talking. Make sure you drop a comment if you have any questions about what's going on in northern Michigan. We have some great future videos coming up. We're doing some really cool stuff. We're going to get back outside. The weather in northern Michigan is great. It's going to be warm let me check what the weather is going to be the next what the 10-day forecast is here. Yeah, the weather is going to be warm for next week. Looks beautiful. Looks like it's going to get into the high to mid 40s, which is great. Yeah, spring is coming and we're ready for it. It has been, I told Simon who else. I don't know who I was talking on the phone today, but I told somebody that before you go, let's see the top sheet of that. Okay, I promise I'll do that in a second. I was talking to somebody today, and also good eye on that. Actually, I have a Burton custom story. I was talking to somebody that this storm is the cherry on the cake, the cherry on top of the winter, because we've had a tough winter. I love to snowboard. I love to go to the Highlands. I love seeing the snow. I think snow is great in northern Michigan. But this was like the worst winter we've had in a while, capped by the worst storm we've had in a while. So I've waited my whole life for somebody to ask to see the snowboard. So I got this Burton custom, I think in 2008 or 2009. So 2008 or 2009, and it's been a great board. I had it for a long time. I finally just replaced it. I just replaced it this year with the new Burton Custom, and it's a really cool board. I'll show you what it looks like, just because if anybody doesn't care about this, you're more than free to leave. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I'll show you what the new one looks like. One of my favorite things about these lives is sometimes the side quests we go on, and I'm definitely here for this one. So this is the new one. I got this board this year. A lot of fun, super cool. This board is this version of that board. So this is just the 2025 version of that board. I'm obviously not going to get rid of it because I think it's a super cool board. I just put it in there because it was in my car one day when I got the new one, and I said, I want to keep it. What would you do? Dr. Shan Queefus? Am I saying that right? Am I pronouncing your name right? What should I do with how should I repurpose it? I might hang it in here. This is a good segue again. We're actually redoing the studio. It's going to look a lot more chic and a little bit more simplistic behind me. We're going to take some of the stuff down, probably keep the Vouv bottle and the bottle of champagne and the Lions helmet. Hopefully they're good this year. And I want to do something with the board. I've either put it at my house, hang it up someplace in the office because I think it's cool. I'll probably take the bindings off. That way it can lay flat. And the crazy part, no, for sure, I'm not going to get rid of it. I don't know though. Should I keep it? Should I turn it into art, or should I keep it around and ride it one day? My son skis. Maybe one day he'll want to snowboard and he'll think it's cool. But do I just make it a piece of art, take the bindings off and hang it on the wall, or do I keep it around to ride in the future? I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I think it looks cool. I can't determine which side of the board is cooler. I like the custom on the back. But I also think the front's cool. So I'd love to hang it on. Yeah, maybe I will. Um, yeah, that's a good idea. A lot of great videos coming up. A lot of great things happening in Northern Michigan. I think this is going to be. I think there's sort of a saying that goes. Sometimes you have to pull an arrow back to let it shoot forward. I think that's the. I think this is the season. I think this is going to be one of the all-time great summers in Northern Michigan because we're ready for it to go from the winter we had. Excuse me, from the winter we had to this storm. I think we're ready for summer. I think we're ready to be on a boat. I think we're ready to be grilling hot dogs, shooting fireworks. Again, and even with the storm, I never once regret living in Northern Michigan. I think this is still the best place to live. I have a little bit of a travel story for those of you that are still here, and there's still a ton of people watching and more joining. Again, if you're just joining now, we're talking about the storm in Northern Michigan, and now we're, just sort of talking about some other stuff. So I flew golf course, yeah, it's funny you say that. Golf course probably got busted too. I drove past the Bayview Country Club today, and there was tons, and they always lose trees, but there was tons and tons of trees because a lot of those trees are super old. So just to give you a travel, I got time for a travel story. I'm going to make a banner that this is going to be a travel story. This was not planned, but since we're just talking, why not? So this is sometimes something you have to consider when traveling in Northern Michigan. And this is the truth. This is not the Chamber of Commerce. This is the truth. Now, the Traverse City Airport has done a really, really good job of expanding, having a lot more flights. So I was flying from from Traverse City to Miami. No, sorry, I was at a leadership conference in Miami, but it was closer to Fort Lauderdale. So we were flying from Petoskey. I had to travel from Petoskey to Traverse City to Fort Lauderdale. So the flight, and I got to do a better job. If you follow me on social media, I was critical of myself because forever my assistant booked my travel, and I took it back because I thought that she used to give me really bad flights, and I was always doing something crazy. But turns out I'm not any better than she is at booking travel. And you would think for someone that travels a lot, I'd be better at this. So unfortunately, I make decisions for the future Gino that are not always in the future Gino's best interest. So on the way there, I booked a flight for 5:00 in the morning because it was the first flight. I'd get there early. I didn't realize, you don't think that when you're booking this, that 5:00 in the morning is actually like really early. And I'll be honest, I didn't even know they had flights that left at 5:00 in the morning. So I booked this flight, 5:00 in the morning is fine. We get there, everything's good. So I'm at this conference. I've got, usually I just carry on, but at this conference, I need to bring a bunch of suits with me. So I have this really nice, super cool bag that you can pack a bunch of suits in. So obviously it's too big to check. So it's too big for a carry-on. So I have to check it. So we get there and we're at the baggage claim and there are people everywhere. And I thought this was just, a little bit of overlap. It's Fort Lauderdale. There's a lot of cruises, it was spring break for a lot of people. I thought this is just spring break traffic. So I get there and there's always, if you're like around a group of people, somebody always becomes like the mom or the dad. So there's this mom there telling everybody how this has been going. And she said she's been there for 2 hours and still did not have her bags. And she said there are people there that there was like this random bag in the middle of the aisle. I don't know who it belonged to. And I asked her and she said that was somebody that had to catch their cruise. The cruise was leaving and they could not wait a second longer. So they left their bags. They left before their bags arrived. And then their bags arrived and people took it off. Also, I think that's if you're that close to cutting it, if you're cutting it that close on a cruise, you didn't give yourself enough margin. So anyways, we're there for, I don't even know, 2-3 hours waiting for our luggage to come off the plane. It was soaking wet. We get to the hotel, everything's fine. Great conference. The JW Marriott Turnberry in Aventura. It said it was in Miami. It's actually Aventura. If you've ever been to Aventura, it's a really nice community, a little bit north of like Miami Beach. This hotel, the JW Marriott Turnberry, beautiful property. If you follow me again on social media, I posted a bunch of pictures of it. Great golf course. Really, really nice resort. Go to the event. Everything's great. One night we have a late dinner. So we have a party at night. So I booked dinner at this really cool restaurant, the steakhouse after. So before we're just killing time, we're sitting at the bar and Morgan Stanley had a big conference there. And they were right next to us. There was like a line, like we were sitting at the bar and there was like a rope. They were like roped off. And I just overheard them talking. It sounded like these are people that manage like professional football players or athletes' money, which was really interesting. And then suddenly I hear, "Welcome to the stage, Alex Rodriguez." So I look over, and Alex Rodriguez, is 10 feet from me speaking to the crowd. So it was really cool to see him. I did try to get them. So I gave up drinking wine for Lent. So I'm drinking Pellegrino. I tried to get them to put the bartender to put my bottle of Pellegrino on his tab, but she wouldn't do it. And I promised he wouldn't notice. And she reminded me that if she put her whole life on his tab, he wouldn't notice. So she did the right thing. Unfortunately, I had to pay for my own bottle of Pellegrino. So as the conference is great, we leave. The flight coming back, we left Fort Lauderdale at, I don't know, say 3:00. And this is not just me talking to hear myself talk. This is a travel story about living in Northern Michigan. My flight was supposed to leave at 4, layover in Charlotte at whatever, 9, back in Traverse City 11:30, which is late, but not undoable. The flight to Charlotte's fine, a little bit bumpy, nothing good. We get to Charlotte, 4-hour layover, which I hate because I don't know why I booked a flight that it gave me a 4-hour layover. But I have, Delta Lounge access, or not Delta, American Express Lounge access. Go hang out in the lounge, eat some food, watch some TV, chill, drink coffee. We get on the plane at 9:30 at night, exhausted from being gone, and people around us. So we're supposed to go from 9:30. We're supposed to get there at 11:30 at night to Traverse City. The people around us are like, "Why does the app says we're going to get there at 2 a.m.?" And I thought, why would it say that? I just brushed it off because I thought, apps are wrong. That's what apps do. Fast forward a few minutes, the pilot comes on and says there is a storm. We're talking thunderstorm tornadoes from like Dallas to Michigan. And he said, we have to fly around it. So our 2-hour flight turned into, he said this 2-hour flight is going to turn into 4 hours. So you go from 11:30 to 1:30 very quickly. And on top of that, we weren't going to leave on time because now we needed more gas because there was a bunch of us. Sorry, not a bunch of us, because we had to go a lot further. So anyways, 4-hour, probably one of the bumpiest flights I've been on in a while. The pilot did a great job and got us there safely. So we get to Traverse City. Everybody's at their wits' end, sleeping, half in and out of it. Not the best morale on the plane at the time. And we notice we're just circling the Traverse City airport for 3 or 4 times. And if you're on a plane, I try to be, I didn't want to be the one to freak out because I believe in being a leader and I didn't want to scare anybody else, but I thought this probably isn't the best thing in the world. So he circles it 4 times and eventually he just guns it and lands the plane. Everybody cheer. I shouldn't say never. It's been a long time since I've been on a plane that people cheered for the pilot once we landed, but definitely one of the rougher flights I've had in a while, one of the rougher landings, but he did it. And somebody told me, I don't know if this is true. I don't believe this is true. I want this to be true. I don't think it's true. But they said the Traverse City airport closes at midnight. If you've ever flown in and out of Traverse City, it is a very small airport. We have another small airport here, Pellston, but that's like Wings, like the old sitcom. The Traverse City airport is like the smallest decent airport you are ever going to see. And it closes at midnight. And someone in the plane said the reason they didn't land, they weren't able to land is because they turned the lights off on the runway and they had to turn them back on. I don't know if that's true or not. I hope it is. But that's my story. That is the joy of traveling in and out of Traverse City when you live in Northern Michigan. Although I have 2 more stories. A friend was coming back from Hawaii, landed in Detroit, had a connecting from Detroit to Pellston, got to Gaylord, which is like a half hour from Pellston, had to turn around because they couldn't land. And then I had a friend that flew was at the same event that I was, that flew from Miami to Detroit. They got rerouted to Pittsburgh. So this storm, again, the storm up here, the storm that caused our flights, that was going to affect anybody, whether you're flying into Traverse City or flying into Detroit, that was going to affect anybody. You have to be, we just come to accept it and we deal with it. But if you fly in the winter in Northern Michigan, don't book late flights unless you're a night owl and you don't mind getting home late. So again, thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for letting me share that story with you. Keep Northern Michigans in your thoughts, prayers if you're religious. If you need anything, if you're in Northern Michigan, you need anything. If you're not in Northern Michigan, you need anything, as always, reach out to me directly. If you think this video is valuable, again, I don't think there's enough exposure about this going on in Northern Michigan. If you would do me a favor and send this to somebody you know or somebody that's interested in Northern Michigan, or post it on social media, that'd be great, just to bring some awareness. Thank you all. It seems like the last few weeks we've had record attendance, and I really appreciate the support. If you're watching this live or the replay and you're not yet subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. That way you never miss a video. And again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you showing up every week on these videos, and I will talk to you soon.